Welcome to Chaos2Cured podcast. You're here with Jeffrey Fried and Kirk Patrick Miller. This podcast is important because we're going to talk about hypersensitivity, which in my experience, and I'm pretty sure Jeffrey's everyone I've ever worked with that has ADHD, anxiety, bipolar. I mean, all of the things I had as well dealt with hypersensitivity. And when we say hypersensitivity, it is a reaction to an extreme with the environment we have around us that is often, I'll use Jeffrey's word that he uses that I love, which is cacophonous. And it's a really vital topic because people that deal with hypersensitivity sometimes don't even know how to express it, especially when they're young. So it's an important topic for teachers to understand, for parents and family and loved ones, because it can get in the way of relationships. And like I said, the reactions don't seem like they match. But let's get into a couple of examples of some of the characteristics or things. Jeffrey, can you give some examples? You and I both have some of the same sensitivities, especially with clothing, but just some good examples that you've seen or dealt with.
Yeah, acute hearing is a big one. Most of the people I work with have that. They hear everything. As a matter of fact, they hear so much that they don't know what to pay attention to, and it can be exhausting hearing everything. They can hear power lines buzzing, lights buzzing, people whispering in the next room, a dog barking 3 miles away. I exaggerate, but the point is it's still a good point. Another one is the sense of smell that is heightened, where they basically can't eat certain foods because the smells are so strong. Um, they are around people. Other people don't even notice that that person may have a slight body odor. They pick it up and it makes them nauseous. They tend to be hypersensitive to textures and foods too. Unless it's soft and creamy and goes down easily, they can't eat it. They tend to only eat a few foods, and the parents just can absolutely go nuts over this because it seems like a willful thing. The person just sort of being oppositional, and it's not. It's real. Sensitivity to criticism. Now, nobody likes to be criticized. It's not my favorite thing either. However, this is more. It's more intense. These folks tend to be perfectionistic, hard on themselves, hard on others. If you criticize them, they won't try around you anymore to be your friend or to answer your questions. And there are more, but those are just a few to kick it off.
I think the one that strikes the biggest chord with me is the sensitivity to criticism, that feeling of having to be perfect. And we've spoken about it before. And when you say hypercritical, a lot of parents will see this as, or I've heard a lot of children use the word, "My mom is always yelling at me." And what the mom is really doing, when I actively see it, is the mom saying, "Listen, this word is misspelled. You need to make sure this is spelled correctly. Can you redo it?" And the individual's like, "Why are they yelling at me?"
Yeah.
And it's the tone of voice. So they definitely hypersensitive to facial expressions, body expressions. Your body odor one is a big one, and textures that you brought up, whether that's clothing. We've spoken about this before in past shows, which is why we're running over it really fast. But if it's really stiff clothing or the seams are sharp and scratch the skin, it's little tiny things that a lot of people don't even notice. I mean, I have friends that don't really care what kind of shirt they wear, or they wear a suit every day. Oh my goodness, I can't stand those. With a tie, just the pressure around the neck. So the sound one that you brought up is something really important for people to think about, because if you are in a relationship with somebody that is neurodivergent and they are hypersensitive, if you want to throw loud parties all the time, it's probably not going to go well. You have to understand the environment. Now, it's not that they're not social. It's just that, big sounds, a lot of excitement tends to wear a lot of these individuals down. They wore me down, even though I liked being at places. I really don't even like being at places anymore. It's almost overwhelming for me. So the airport is,
Mm,
you mentioned like hearing different sounds. It's just, there's a lot to take in. And a lot of the individuals I work with now, I notice more of that tendency. And we've spoken about this in the past that you're seeing more individuals like this. So, hopefully some of this stuff is addressed in schools, and some schools do, but not all of them. And, you know, I think where people often misinterpret is that they hear the word hypersensitive and they discount it because the word doesn't sound all that important. They're like, oh my goodness. So they're just sensitive to like clothing. It's not like that. It's like you're wearing sandpaper.
yep.
So it's to an extreme, and it's so extreme that it actually gets in the way of your ability to function. If I was wearing those clothes, I couldn't pay attention in school. So on photo day, I lost the day, right? So it's kind of that stuff. So when it gets in the way of your life, which it can, it needs to be addressed. And that kind of leads me to, some things that you've done in the past or things that have you've seen help. What would you offer as suggestions?
Well, the simple ones are when you can't get away from a loud cacophonous environment, bring earplugs, headphones. Another one is if you want to go to a loud movie or just a movie, some theaters now, and it's becoming more and more the rage, will have autistic friendly showings. In classroom situations, probably not an open classroom. It seems wonderful, but it's not. When you pick up everything and you want to focus, it's really hard when you're distracted all the time. And I want to touch on this isn't exactly answering your question, but it explains a lot. I work with people who are on the autistic spectrum, and all of them have these sensitivities. And Temple Grandin, the guru of autism, said, and I quote, exact quote, I'm not paraphrasing. She said, autistic people have every sense that everyone else has, just more of them. And I'm not saying that everyone who's hypersensitive has autism, but that's one characteristic of autism that they have. And it's pretty damn easy to become autistic in an environment that is this outrageously loud and distracting. The mechanism of autism is there's too much to pick up, so you shut down and you basically just pay attention to very little. You learn to hyper focus, and you learn to not fight with. I mean, you can't fight with your kid. Now I'm shifting back to answering your question because they can't wear a suit or certain kinds of clothing. You just let them pick out the clothing, and as long as it's somewhat appropriate, you go with it. You don't try to force them into wearing something that will make them feel horrific. Um, when you talk to your kid, you use a soft voice and you're encouraging. And you say to your child, man, I don't want to hurt your feelings. So if you think I'm yelling at you, please let me know. Um, you essentially don't walk away from it or run away from it or see it as oppositional. It's real. And having this particular tendency myself, what I do is I stay away from loud environments. I just don't go. I used to go to like football games, NFL games and stuff. There is no way on earth I'm doing that anymore. You just pick up all the people's emotions, the sound, everything is just amplified. So you just don't apologize. You just don't put yourself in those environments. Or if you do, wear an earplug or, essentially find a place to escape every once in a while, a break, bathroom break, or whatever. Those are just some of the strategies. But bottom line, all I'm really saying is accommodate for them. Don't push your child and let them think that there's something wrong with them or why are they being so willful. I've seen parents hit kids because the kid won't wear certain clothing or won't eat a certain food. That's a sure way to make sure that your kid will dislike you. So those are some my thoughts on it, and this comes from someone who knows what they're talking about. Because number one, I'm like this. Number
Well,
two, all the people I work with are like this.
there's a few things that you brought up, and I just want to make sure we address for anybody listening. It's not giving in to your child to present an environment that helps them succeed. And I think there's a lot of parents that look at, okay, so if they choose the clothing, you're giving in to them. They
Yeah,
must wear what you want them to. It's not about that. If you are running a company, you want to set up an environment so that your employees are happy because they're going to be more successful. The probability of success is higher. It's the same thing with a child. And I see a lot of resistance from parents because they're like, it must be this way. You have to be tough on them. You have to do this. You have to draw. Well, a lot of these people have never dealt with a child who absolutely cannot be punished. And people that hear this, they're like, no, that's not possible. For me, the more someone would punish me, the more stubborn I would get. And that was from a very early age. I think my mom read a book on parenting and it was like, oh, surprise your child by, I think it was like, you know, I don't even remember what it was. My mom would remember and she tried it on me. And the only thing I remember from the story is she said I was just literally would not stop shouting for days. And that gives some of the most people that hear this just don't understand how intense some of these emotions can be. And when you are putting them in an environment that is already tough, which is school, you have people that are bullying. Everyone gets bullied at some point in time. It's never a thing, but it's part of life. And they're sensitive to the sounds. If a lot of them have ADHD, which I had, which makes learning more difficult. So you have to stay super focused the entire day. It's not for a second, it's like the entire day. And then you have to deal with all of the other things. If they're wearing a pair of comfortable clothes, when I was actually able to wear comfortable clothes, it helped me learn. So it's about setting them up for success. It's not about giving into them. And, I think communication, one of the things you mentioned was like, don't be apologetic, be truthful about what you need. If people really communicate and say, listen, I really can't deal with that, it's a lot for me. Can we find a compromise? As long as you get your child or your student talking to you and communicating with you, you have a win. When there's no communication, there's no way to move forward. So I think being understanding of it is really important for people to listen to this. Understand it, even if you don't get it, be empathetic. If somebody is really overwhelmed with something like a smell, a sound, bright lights, just try to understand they might be sensing it in a degree that is painful. So I think we could use a lot more empathy in this world. That's a whole different show. So
Hmm.
do you have any closing statements or things that you want to just follow up on? Because it's a really interesting subject, and I think it is very important.
Yeah, I would close with the realization that if you come down really, really hard on a kid, if you're a parent, obviously, and you say you're wearing these clothes anyway, or you're finishing that meal, I don't care. On the surface, you can probably win. A lot of times, children just can't resist it anymore. They try. They want to be good, so they do what their parents say, and then they're sitting on all kinds of repressed rage, which come out in ways such as they become very depressed or extremely angry. They can't verbalize what it is that's going on. But that's one of the probable outcomes of trying to squash your kids, talking about sensitivities and acting on them. It can't go well. You're just going to get a very, very repressed kid who will find some way to get it out. And unfortunately, it's usually anger. And if it's not anger, it's depression. So this is a very important, vital subject and needs to be taken much more seriously than it has been.
That was so well stated. I don't want to add anything to that. So I hope everyone just rewinds it for about 40 seconds or so and listens. Jeffrey, that was a great show. I appreciate it, and we should probably do a show on depression. It's an important topic. So we'll cover a couple more. Thank you to all the people who are listening. That was we're trying to do little slimmer shows with a lot of great content on what we're calling like our neuro series. So these are really vital topics that we think are very helpful to a large demographic. So thanks for joining us every week, Jeffrey. Always a pleasure. So thank you so much. See you next week.
You bet.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Chaos2Cured podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with everyone you know. And definitely like, follow, and subscribe. Certainly leave a comment if you'd like. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about the next time. Also, in our show notes, there should be direct links where you can follow us on our social media, as well as reach out to us directly. Thanks again, and have a great day. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on Chaos2Cured podcast are the speaker's own. All discussion is based on our own experiences. We do not and cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information. Chaos2Cured podcast cannot give medical or health advice. All discussion is based upon our personal experiences and meant for general and educational purposes. This podcast is not a substitute for professional help or for diagnostic purposes for yourself or another. Chaos2Cured podcast always encourages you to consult an appropriate professional.